Hi guys, and welcome back to SwitchUp. A huge thanks to all the new supporters we've got. I think we're almost at 56,000 now. If you're new to the channel, then consider subscribing. As promised, we've got our monthly roundup of the top scores from October, and as I'm sure you're all aware, there were some incredible games that we reviewed. So, without further ado, let's get on with the list. Coming in at number 10 is the hugely popular Rabbee series from Circle Entertainment. Now this was reviewed by our good friend Dave Morrish and is a 2D exploration platformer that focuses on having that non-linear gameplay that we'd associate with a Metroidvania. He really enjoyed this title, and judging by the comments on that video, there are many fans of this game. It scored an overall SwitchUp score of 82%, putting it in that 10th spot.
The next game then, coming in at number 9 for the month, was a game called Poli Roll. Now this was quite a simple platformer, very cheaply priced, and clearly drew heavy inspiration from some of the classics of the past, most notably Sonic the Hedgehog, with a bit of Zool thrown in there as well for good measure. This was again reviewed by Dave, and he very much enjoyed this one, as long as you can look past the obvious influences, and it scored 83%. The next game for the month then was Disgaea 4 Complete Plus. Now this Disgaea game takes place in Hades and sees you take on the role of Valvatores as he runs for government. It's a very quirky game with your typical turn-based action that you'd find in a Disgaea game, and all previously available DLC included in the pack. Now one thing I will say about the Disgaea games is they are incredibly deep and can be a bit frightening for newcomers, but this one allows you to play the game at your level, and it's scored 84%.
Next up was a game called Vampire from Focus Home Interactive, and it was another port from the excellent Team Saber, who were also the guys that brought us The Witcher 3. This is a really interesting third-person action-adventure game where you maintain your role as a doctor while also maintaining a role as a vampire. There's some excellent dialogue in this game, with a very interesting mechanic whereby if you discover the full stories of the characters in the world, you'll gain more XP when you decide to turn them into vampires themselves. The combat isn't the best in this one, but it was the narrative that really drove it forward for me, and it scored a SwitchUp score of 85%. Now, as a dad, Cat Quest was one of those games where I couldn't get much game time alone, as my daughter just wanted to play in co-op, and in a game like this, that's absolutely fine. In fact, it plays much better with a partner or a friend to join you. Here you take on the role of a cat and a dog, long-running enemies in the series who have to work together to defeat the darkness invading the land. It's a really simple ARPG that has a beautiful visual style, but everything just works so well in this one. I would say that it is most certainly a game to be played with a friend if you can, and isn't quite the same experience solo, as the AI isn't the best. Overall though, it scored a SwitchUp score of 88%.
Coming in at number 5 for the month then was Ukulele and the Impossible Lair. Now this was a 2D platformer with quite an interesting premise whereby you could take on the final level at any time. The caveat to attempting to play it early is of course you have far fewer hit points, and the way to earn more hit points is by playing the levels and rescuing one of the B-tallion. Each one of these will then be added to your character and serve as an additional hit point for that final level. The game looks absolutely beautiful, coming from some of the people that were formerly of Rare from back in the day, and is scored from the legendary David Wise as well as some other heavy hitters from the industry. This one scored a fantastic score of 89%.
Trine 4 is next up for us, and it was one that I reviewed. It was actually my first in the series, but from what I understand, it was a real return to form. It had a heavy emphasis on those physics-based puzzles, and obviously has 1 to 4 player co-op. The only thing I found slightly unusual as a new player was that there weren't 4 characters. It just seemed a bit odd having a duplicate character when you did play as 4 of you together. Overall, I enjoyed this one immensely, and it was the visual style that made it a standout for me, as well as the characterization of those 3 main protagonists. It scored an overall SwitchUp score of 90%.
Coming in at number 3 for the month of October then was the wonderful Ferris. Now this is a 2D run and gun action game with fantastic sprite work and an insanely high difficulty level. Coming from the team that created Slain Back from Hell, this spiritual successor, in my opinion at least, improved on everything that came before it. You had the same metal soundtrack, as I mentioned, that very high difficulty level, but the fact that you were running and gunning this time round just made the game flow much better for me, and it scored an overall score of 91%.
Right then, the penultimate game is the Return of the Obra Dinn. I've only recently reviewed this on the channel and I absolutely loved it. It's Lucas Pope's second game after Papers, Please, which he first released I believe on iOS. This is essentially an investigative game where you have to deduce the identities of 66 missing crew members. You do this by rewinding time and playing out the final moments of every crew member. You're not given a great deal of information and have to deduce much of your findings. This was an absolutely great game. There's not much more I can say than that. I would recommend you check out our review, and if you haven't done so already, purchase the game. It got a SwitchUp score of 92%. Our top scoring game for October is the one and only The Witcher 3. Saber Interactive did an incredible job of bringing this game in its entirety across to the Nintendo Switch. Many felt that the graphics were a touch too blurry, but in all honesty, my expectations of one of the most taxing PC games of all time weren't nearly as high as what was produced. All of Geralt of Rivia's adventures are here to be played in the palm of your hand, and if you're new to the series, I highly recommend going and checking it out. This third-person action-adventure game gives you completely free reign, a vast open world, and a ton of questing, as well as all the DLC packs that have been released for the PC version. A brilliant game and well worthy of our top score of 94%. Overall, it was a great month in terms of Nintendo Switch releases. Yes, we do see a lot of ports on the Switch, and many of these games are ports, but when they're done this well, it's worth, in my opinion, owning them on the Switch.
We had a great response to part 1 of this new series last month, so it's very much appreciated. We hope you enjoy part 2, and I will stick links to every game mentioned in this video in the top comments. A quick thank you to our Patreons for your continued support. If you'd like to join them, the links will be in the description. And to each and every one of you for watching our videos, take care, and until next time, happy gaming.
And as always, for all things Switch all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers guys, see ya!